Shy cleaner performed CPR for a stranger in the elevator, unaware the man was the millionaire she worked for. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The metal doors of the service elevator slid shut with a tired groan, the kind that echoed through the concrete spine of Reed Global Tower long after midnight. The fluorescent panel above flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale glow across the small space where Maya stood hugging her cleaning cart. Her shoulders were stiff from hours of scrubbing floors on the 27th through 35th levels, her back aching the way it always did near the end of her shift. The building was silent at this hour, the kind of silence that pressed around her like fog, swallowing every sound except the faint hum of machinery and the soft squeak of her cart's wheels. Maya lifted a gloved hand to wipe the sweat from her forehead, pushing a loose strand of hair back under her cheap drugstore ponytail holder. She whispered to herself the way she often did when fatigue set in, a little mantra to stay awake, stay steady, just finish the shift, get the paycheck, pay the overdue bills, pray her mom's heart medication lasted until next month. She pressed the button for the first floor, her reflection ghost-like in the brushed metal doors, baggy uniform 2 sizes too big, worn-out sneakers, eyes that rarely looked up when someone passed. She didn't notice the man stepping in until the elevator doors bounced open again. He stumbled in like someone carrying the weight of 3 different worlds, his dark suit jacket slightly wrinkled, tie loosened, breath shallow like he had been running or fighting the end of a long-lost battle. Maya instantly shrank to the corner, her instinctive reaction whenever someone stepped into a tight space with her. But something felt wrong. The man leaned back heavily against the wall, blinking slow and uneven, one hand pressed to his chest as if trying to quiet a pounding drum beneath his ribs. A soft metallic click echoed as something slipped from his inner pocket and fell onto the elevator floor, a silver pen, gleaming even in the dull light, engraved with letters she couldn't see from where she stood. "Sir, are you okay?" she whispered, her voice barely more than air. The elevator shuddered as it descended. He didn't answer. Instead, his knees buckled, his shoulder hitting the metal wall with a dull thud before his entire body crumpled to the ground. Maya gasped, her heart launching into her throat. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes were half open but unfocused, breath shallow, skin turning an alarming shade of grey. She had seen this once before, during a mandatory CPR training session no one in her department took seriously except her. Cardiac arrest. In the middle of a sealed elevator. 10 floors from help. Maya felt the fear surge, cold and sharp, but something stronger rose with it, a memory of her instructor's firm voice, if you freeze, they die. If you try, they might live. She pressed her ear near the man's mouth. No breath. No movement. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Please don't die," she whispered, more to herself than him. She interlaced her fingers, placed her palms on the center of his chest, and started compressions. 1, 2, 3, her voice trembled as she counted, pushing down hard, her arms shaking from exhaustion and terror. The elevator hummed downward, indifferent to the life suspended between its steel walls. Sweat rolled down her temple. She adjusted her position, kept going. "Come on, please." On the 30th compression the man's body jerked slightly, a faint gasp slipping from his lips. Maya froze, eyes wide, then leaned down to give 2 rescue breaths the way she had practiced on plastic dummies. The elevator dinged. The door slid open. Security guards waiting in the lobby rushed forward. "Step back," one of them shouted. But as they lifted the man onto a stretcher, one detail slipped unnoticed, Maya's glove catching the silver pen on the floor, the engraved initials brushed by her thumb before the crowd swept past. AR. She didn't know the pen would matter. She definitely didn't know the man she had just dragged back from the edge wasn't a stranger at all, but the billionaire. Whose name sat on the massive sign outside the tower? Adrian Reed. The lobby lights of Reed Global Tower still glowed harsh and cold long after the ambulance pulled away, leaving Maya standing alone by her cleaning cart with her hands trembling inside her gloves. The security team barely looked at her, too focused on reporting details and replaying camera footage, but that was normal. People rarely looked at the cleaners. Maya kept seeing the man's face in her mind, the way his chest refused to rise, the moment his body jerked beneath her palms, the faint gasp that had made her cry out in relief. She kept hearing her own shaking voice counting compressions inside the tight steel box. When the adrenaline faded, her knees went weak. She leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to her chest as if trying to quiet the echo of fear still knocking inside. She had saved a man. A stranger. A stranger whose name she did not know. A stranger who might still be fighting for his life in a hospital 10 blocks away. Her shift was technically over, but she stayed for another hour because her hands would not stop trembling, and she did not trust her legs to carry her down the dark sidewalk toward the bus stop. At last, when the tower emptied and the lobby quieted, she pushed her cart back to the janitor's closet and hung her uniform jacket inside, but something tugged at her sleeve. The silver pen. When she pulled off her glove, the pen slid into her palm. A beautifully engraved silver pen, heavier than it looked, the letters AR catching the dim fluorescent light. She should have turned it in, but she could not bring herself to hand it to the security team that had not even remembered her name. Instead, she tucked it into her pocket with the intention of returning it the next day. She walked out into the chilly night, the pen weighing down her pocket like an unanswered question. By the time she reached her tiny studio apartment on the west side, the city was silent except for distant sirens and the occasional hum of late-night traffic. Her mother was already asleep in the bedroom, the oxygen machine breathing softly beside her. Maya paused at the doorway, watching her for a long moment. She wanted to tell her mother what happened, how she had fought fear with trembling hands, how she had breathed life back into a stranger. But waking her would risk another heart episode, so Maya simply whispered good night and retreated into the small kitchenette. She boiled water for instant noodles, but her stomach twisted too tightly to eat. She sat at the small table, fingers tracing the engraving on the pen again and again. AR. Who was he? Why was he alone in the elevator? Why had no one recognized him? She finally lay down after midnight, but sleep did not come. Her mind kept flashing back to the moment his heartbeat had seemed to return under her hands. She wondered if he had survived. She wondered if he had a family waiting. She wondered if he would ever know that a shy cleaner had been the one to kneel beside him in a dying elevator and refuse to give up. The morning sun found her awake, bleary-eyed, and already late for her next shift. She rushed through getting dressed, tucked the silver pen into her pants pocket, and hurried out the door. When she arrived at Reed Global Tower, the entire building felt different. Security guards stood stiff at every corner. Staff whispered in tight clusters. An unusual tension crackled in the air like static. Maya slipped past them quietly, headed for the time clock, but 2 workers near the elevators caught her attention. "Did you hear?" one whispered. It was Adrian Reed. The Adrian Reed. Collapsed last night. Some kind of cardiac event. Maya froze mid-step, the breath sucked from her lungs. Adrian Reed. The billionaire founder of Reed Global. The man whose signature hung on her employment forms. The name that glowed in giant silver letters outside the building. The initials AR. She pressed a hand to her pocket. The silver pen felt suddenly hot. The stranger she had saved in the elevator was not a stranger at all. And the entire city was about to explode with the news. Maya took one shaky breath and whispered, "Oh no." Then another thought hit her harder, sharper, terrifying. What if someone had seen her? What if she had done something wrong? What if doing the right thing cost her the only job she had left? The elevator dinged nearby, and she flinched like it was calling her out by name. For the rest of the morning, Maya moved like a shadow through Reed Global Tower, keeping her head down, her steps light, and her breath shallow as whispers followed her everywhere she went. Some employees spoke in shock, some in fear, and some in the cold, gossipy tone of people who felt safely distant from tragedy, but every mention of the name Adrian Reed made Maya's pulse jump. She slipped into the janitor's supply room, shutting the door quietly behind her, and pressed her back against the metal shelving unit as if it could steady her shaking. Inside her pocket, the silver pen seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. She pulled it out and stared at the engraved initials, tracing them slowly with her thumb. A.R. She had held that pen while kneeling beside him. She had breathed for him, fought for him, begged him to wake up. And she had not known that he was the man whose face appeared in Forbes, the man whose business decisions rippled through the entire city, the man whose signature determined whether she kept her job or lost it. The thought made her dizzy. A knock at the supply room door startled her so badly she nearly dropped the pen. She shoved it into her pocket and opened the door a crack. Her supervisor, Mr. Crowley, stood in the hallway with his arms crossed and his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Why are you hiding in here?" he demanded. Maya swallowed. "I am not hiding. I was just organizing supplies." He scoffed. "Well, hurry up. There is a walkthrough scheduled this afternoon, and everything needs to be spotless. Especially the executive floors. The board is in a panic. Leadership is meeting about last night's incident." He lowered his voice as if savoring the drama. "We cannot have any mistakes." "Understood." Maya nodded quickly. Crowley gave her one more suspicious glance before stalking off. She waited until his footsteps faded before letting out a trembling breath. She forced herself back to work, but every corner of the building felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves knew she carried a secret. When she reached the 28th floor, she passed a cluster of employees gathered around a television in the break room. A news anchor spoke in crisp, urgent tones. Sources confirm that Adrian Reed, 35-year-old founder and chief executive officer of Reed Global, suffered a sudden cardiac event late last night. He was rushed to St. Mercy Hospital, where he remains in critical but stable condition. Maya froze, watching the screen from the hallway. A professionally shot photo of Adrian appeared, showing him in a perfectly tailored suit, standing in front of the company logo, confident and composed, nothing like the pale, collapsing man she had held in her arms. The anchor continued, according to internal sources, Mr. Reed was found unresponsive inside a service elevator. The identity of the person who performed life-saving measures has not yet been released. Maya's breath caught. Her fingertips tingled. Without meaning to, she backed away from the break room. She hurried down the hallway, gripping her cleaning cart like a lifeline. She needed air. She needed quiet. She needed to think. She reached the end of the corridor and slipped into an empty conference room. The lights were off, but sunlight poured through the glass windows, illuminating dust particles floating in the air. Only then did she pull out the pen again. She turned it over in her palm, remembering the moment it had slipped from his jacket. She remembered how cold his skin had felt beneath her hands, how still his chest had been. Tears pricked at her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, whispering to herself, "I did what I had to do." Anyone would have, but the words caught because she knew they were not entirely true. Not everyone would have knelt on that elevator floor. Not everyone would have pushed through fear. And now she held the only proof that she had been there, the pen of the man the world believed untouchable. A sudden chime echoed from her pocket. Her phone. She pulled it out, confused because it rarely buzzed during her shift. The message was from an unknown number. "If you have something that belongs to Adrian Reed, please come to St. Mercy Hospital." Maya's heart stopped for a beat. Then another message came. "He is asking who saved him." The phone slipped in her grasp. She stared at the screen, the words blurring as panic surged through her. How did they know? She had not told anyone. She had not given her name. She had barely spoken at all after the incident. Her mind raced. Should she go? Should she hide? Should she pretend she knew nothing? Her breath came fast and uneven. As she whispered into the empty room, "What am I supposed to do?" Outside the glass walls, the city stretched endlessly below her, alive and uncaring, while somewhere in a hospital bed, the man whose life she had fought for was waking up, asking for the person who refused to let him die. And that person was her. For several minutes, Maya stood frozen in the dim conference room, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white, as if the small device might steady the storm inside her. The unknown number glowed on the screen, each word repeating itself in her mind until it felt like the walls were closing in. If you have something that belongs to Adrian Reed, please come to St. Mercy Hospital. He is asking who saved him. She whispered the words aloud, barely recognizing her own voice. It felt impossible. A man like him, someone surrounded by power and wealth, someone guarded by an entire corporation, was asking for her, a cleaner who barely made enough to pay for rent and her mother's medication. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and held her trembling hands against her stomach, trying to slow her breathing. But the more she tried to calm herself, the more memories from last night climbed back through her chest like rising water. His unsteady breath. His collapsing body. Her hands pushing on his chest, begging him to come back. The pen slipping on the floor. The moment she thought he was gone. And now he was alive. He was alive and asking for the person who was there. She glanced down at the silver pen resting in her palm again, feeling the weight of it in a way that was no longer just physical. She knew she could not keep it. She knew she could not avoid this forever. But the thought of going to the hospital made her stomach twist into a tight knot. What if someone accused her of stealing it? What if they thought she had done something wrong? What if Adrian Reed himself asked her questions she did not know how to answer? A gentle knock on the glass startled her, and she quickly shoved the pen back into her pocket. A young woman in a navy blazer stood outside the door with a tablet pressed to her chest. She looked nervous, which immediately made Maya more nervous. "Are you Maya Torres?" Maya's breath hitched. She opened the door just a few inches. "Yes. Yes, I am." The woman let out a relieved breath. "Thank goodness, I have been searching everywhere for you. I am Tessa, from the Human Resources Department. You need to come with me." Maya's knees softened. "Is there a problem?" Tessa shook her head quickly. "No, nothing like that. I was told to escort you to transportation. St. Mercy Hospital is expecting you." Maya blinked, the words crashing into her like cold water. "Transportation? Hospital? I do not understand." Tessa softened her voice. "Maya, I cannot share details, but it is urgent. The board knows someone performed CPR. They know it was a cleaner. They know it was you." Maya felt her heart sink. "I am in trouble." "No," Tessa insisted gently, "you are being asked for." Those 4 words made Maya's head spin. "I am being asked for by who?" Tessa hesitated. "By Mr. Reed." It felt like all the oxygen vanished from the room. The world shifted, tilting sideways under her feet. She thought she might faint. She had saved him, but she never imagined facing him. She never imagined standing in the same room as the man whose company owned the building where she scrubbed floors. I cannot," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I do not belong in a place like that." Tessa's expression softened even more. "Maya," he woke up asking who helped him. "The doctor said the CPR was the reason he survived long enough to be revived. He wants to see you. I think he wants to thank you." Thank her. The idea hit her harder than fear. No one ever thanked her. Not supervisors. Not employees who walked past her. Not strangers. Not even life itself most days. And now a billionaire wanted to thank her? Tessa gently placed a hand on her arm. "You do not have to be afraid. You did nothing wrong. You saved someone's life. Let us take you to him." Maya swallowed hard, fighting tears she did not want to shed in front of anyone. She nodded once, small but certain. Tessa led her through the hallway, past clusters of employees who paused to stare, but Maya kept her eyes on the ground, her hand resting protectively over the silver pen in her pocket. When they reached the lobby, a black sedan waited outside with the Reed Global emblem on the door. Maya hesitated at the entrance, her pulse pounding in her ears, but Tessa gave her an encouraging nod. "It is all right. You are doing the right thing." Maya climbed into the back seat slowly, her heart thudding against her ribs as the door closed behind her with a quiet, final click. As the car pulled away from the tower, she looked out the window, wondering what waited for her at St. Mercy Hospital, and what she would say to the man whose life had collided with hers in the most unexpected way. Somewhere in a quiet hospital room, Adrian Reed was awake, alive, and waiting. And Maya, the shy cleaner who never saw herself as anything more than invisible, was being driven straight toward him. The ride to St. Mercy Hospital felt unreal to Maya, as if she were watching someone else's life through the window rather than living her own. The city passed by in a blur of steel, headlights, and rushing crosswalks while her heartbeat thudded unevenly against her ribs. Every few seconds she found herself touching the silver pen in her pocket, as if making sure it had not disappeared, as if losing it would somehow erase the truth of what happened in the elevator. When the car finally slowed beneath the hospital's glass awning, Maya's breath caught in her throat. The entrance bustled with nurses pushing carts, families speaking in hushed voices, and doctors striding purposefully through the double doors. It was a world she usually passed by quietly, unnoticed, but now she was being escorted toward it as someone important, or at least someone who had done something important. Tessa opened the car door and motioned her forward. "He is on the top floor, private wing," she said gently. "Security is expecting you." The words made Maya's palms sweat. A private wing. Security. It only reminded her how powerful Adrian Reed really was and how far beneath him she felt. They stepped through the sliding hospital doors, and the cool antiseptic air wrapped around her immediately. Machines beeped in distant hallways, carts rolled by with steady rattles, and muffled voices blended into a constant hum. Maya stayed close to Tessa, terrified she would take a wrong turn and somehow end up where she did not belong. A guard at the elevator nodded at Tessa, then looked at Maya with a mixture of curiosity and respect, something she was not used to. "She is cleared," Tessa said softly. The guard pressed a key card against the panel, and the elevator doors slid open. As they ascended, Maya felt her stomach tighten. She rubbed her palms against her jeans, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. When the elevator stopped, the doors opened to a quiet hallway lined with soft lights and framed photographs of city skylines. It was nothing like the busy hospital floors below. This hallway was silent and still, as if time moved slower here. As they began to walk, a nurse in light blue scrubs stepped out of a room and smiled warmly. "Are you Maya Torres?" Maya nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "He is awake," the nurse said, her voice gentle. "He has been asking about the person who performed CPR. His memory is fuzzy, but he keeps repeating that he felt someone's hands pressing on his chest and someone's voice telling him to hold on. He wants to meet you." Maya felt a wave of dizziness, and she steadied herself by placing one hand on the wall. The nurse stepped closer. "Take your time. He is stable now. You saved him." Those words, "you saved him," settled over her like a warm blanket, unexpected and impossible. She had spent her whole life feeling invisible, yet this time, her presence had made the difference between life and death. The nurse guided her forward. The door to Adrian Reed's room was slightly open, and Maya could see part of the interior, a heart monitor glowing softly, a tall window letting in sunlight, and the silhouette of a man sitting up in bed. Before she could take another step, Tessa touched her shoulder. "Remember, you do not need to say anything you are not ready to say. Just breathe. He wants to thank you. That is all." Maya nodded slowly, still feeling as though her legs were moving without permission. She stepped closer, and with each step her heartbeat grew louder. When she reached the doorway, her breath trembled. Adrian Reed turned his head. His skin was still pale and he looked exhausted, but his eyes were alert, searching, as if looking for a memory he desperately wanted to recover. For a moment, he simply stared at her, trying to connect the shape of her face to the flashes of fading consciousness he must have experienced. His voice was soft, rough around the edges. "Are you the one who was with me?" Maya swallowed, her fingers brushing the pen in her pocket. "Yes," she whispered. "I was there." Adrian's gaze dropped to her trembling hands and then returned to her eyes with something fierce, grateful, and deeply human. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "I woke up because you refused to let me go." Maya felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she held them back. For the first time since the elevator doors had closed around them the night before, she felt the world slow down, breath by breath, as if fate itself were waiting for her answer. For a long moment, Maya stood frozen in the doorway, her breath caught in her throat as the weight of Adrian Reed's words settled into the quiet hospital room. She had imagined this moment 100 different ways during the car ride, but none of those imagined versions had prepared her for the reality of his eyes on her now, steady and full of a gratitude so deep it felt almost overwhelming. She stepped inside slowly, each movement cautious, as if she might disturb the stillness around him. The soft beeping of the heart monitor filled the room, steady now, nothing like the alarming silence she had heard inside the elevator. She clasped her hands together and whispered, "I only did what anyone would have done." Adrian shook his head gently, the motion small but firm. "No, that is not true. I was told I collapsed in the service elevator. Most people do not even use that elevator. And even fewer would know what to do. You did." His gaze drifted to her hands as if remembering the pressure of her palms against his chest. "The doctor said I might not have made it if help came any later." Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to look away, but something about his voice kept pulling her back. She took a shallow breath. I remembered the training video from work. The one they make us watch every year. I did not think I would ever need it. But when you fell, I just knew I had to try." Adrian closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if absorbing her words, and when he opened them again, there was a softness there that had not been present earlier. "Trying saved my life," he said. "You saved my life." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, and she glanced down at the floor, her fingers nervously twisting together. She had never been the center of anyone's attention, much less the attention of someone like him. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver pen, holding it out with hesitant hands. "This fell when you collapsed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did not know it was yours until this morning." Adrian stared at the pen for a long second before taking it with a careful, almost reverent motion. His fingertips brushed hers when he accepted it, and Maya felt a strange jolt run through her chest. He turned the pen over, brushing the engraving with his thumb. "My father gave me this when I founded Reed Global," he murmured. "I thought I lost it forever." He looked up at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "You have returned two things to me. This pen, and my life." Maya's breath trembled as she answered, "I am just glad you are all right." Adrian motioned to the chair beside his bed. "Please, sit. You do not have to rush away." She hesitated for a moment, but something in his tone gently insisted. She lowered herself into the chair, sitting stiffly, unsure of how to behave in front of a man whose decisions shaped entire companies. Adrian studied her quietly, not with the sharp, evaluating gaze one might expect from a powerful executive, but with something profoundly human, as if he was trying to piece together the person who had been the last image his fading consciousness held onto. "I keep remembering a voice," he said softly. "Someone telling me to hold on. Someone counting. I think it was you." Maya nodded, feeling her pulse quicken. "I was scared," she admitted. "But I did not want to stop. I kept thinking that somewhere, someone might be waiting for you." Adrian exhaled a slow, shaky breath. "There is no one," he said, the admission falling heavy in the room. "No family. No partner. Just work." Maya looked up, surprised by the vulnerability in his tone. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire whose name hung on skyscrapers, but a man who had built an empire so large that it left little space for anything else. Then I am glad I was there, she whispered. Adrian held her gaze, his voice quiet but full of something she could not yet name. So am I. The room fell into a gentle silence, the kind that did not feel awkward, but rather delicate, as if something unexpected but important had begun to take shape between them, fragile and new, yet undeniably real. For the rest of the afternoon, Maya stayed by Adrian's bedside, answering his gentle questions in soft, careful sentences, always unsure whether she was saying too much or too little. She kept her hands folded in her lap, trying to calm the nervous tremor that rose every time he looked at her with that quiet, grateful intensity. But as the hours passed, the room began to shift. Nurses came in with charts, a specialist arrived to check Adrian's vitals, and eventually a pair of executives from Reed Global appeared in expensive suits, their voices clipped and businesslike as they discussed upcoming board decisions. Maya immediately stood from her chair, gripping the armrest as if it were a lifeline. She whispered, "I should go. I have probably taken too much of your time." Adrian looked at her with a frown that was small but unmistakably sincere. "You have taken none of my time. If anything, I owe you mine." But she stepped back anyway, shrinking into the wall as the executives entered fully. One of them, a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes, glanced at her with mild confusion. "Who is she?" he asked bluntly. Before Maya could stammer out a single word, Adrian answered, "She is the reason I am alive right now." The words made all three people in the room turn toward her. The tall executive raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. The other, a woman with a severe bun and a tablet, tightened her lips into something she might have thought was a polite smile. "The employee from the elevator?" she asked. "The cleaner?" The word cleaner landed like a weight on Maya's chest. She lowered her gaze, something inside her shrinking the way it always did when someone said it in that tone. Adrian, however, straightened slightly, a flash of something protective passing through his eyes. "Her name is Maya Torres," he said firmly. "And she performed CPR for several minutes while I was unconscious. I would not be here without her." The executives exchanged a glance, startled by his tone, but they quickly masked it behind corporate professionalism. "Of course," the man said. "We are grateful." The woman added, "Security wants to finalize the internal incident report. We may need her to answer a few procedural questions. Liability, authorizations, that sort of thing." Maya's breath caught. Liability. Authorizations. Words she did not fully understand but had learned to fear. She twisted her fingers behind her back and whispered, "I did not mean to break any rules." Adrian's expression tightened. His voice dropped lower, sharper, as he responded, "She did not break any rules. She saved a life." The executives nodded politely, but Maya could tell they were already forming their own conclusions. After a few minutes of updates, they excused themselves, leaving the door slightly ajar behind them. Maya exhaled shakily, realizing she had been holding her breath the entire time. "I should really go now," she said softly. Adrian studied her with a mixture of frustration and concern. "You are not in trouble. Please do not let them make you feel that you are." She looked at him, unsure how to explain the truth. People like her were always one misunderstanding away from being replaced. A complaint, a rumor, a wrong impression, and she could lose everything. She forced a small smile. "I am glad you are getting better. That is what matters." Adrian tried to sit up a little straighter but winced at the strain. "Will you come back tomorrow?" The question stunned her. I do not know," she whispered honestly. "I work the evening shift. And I probably should not be getting in the way." "You are not in the way," he said quietly. "You are the only person who has made this room feel less like a cage." The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten, but before she could respond, a nurse stepped in with a tray. "Mr. Reed, you need to rest," she said gently. "Vitals are still unstable. No more visitors today." Maya instinctively stepped back toward the door. Adrian looked at her one more time, his gaze lingering with something unspoken. "Please do not disappear," he said softly. She nodded once, then slipped out into the hallway, letting the door close between them. As she walked toward the elevator, the weight of the day pressed down on her, heavy and confusing. She had come to return a pen, to answer a message, to clear her conscience. But she had left with something far more complex, a feeling she did not have a name for yet, something warm and fragile blooming beneath the fear. And as she stepped into the elevator that would take her back to the lobby, she whispered to herself, "What am I getting pulled into?" The doors slid shut, and the hum of the descent felt eerily familiar, as if fate itself had pressed the button. For the next 2 days, Maya tried to return to her normal routine at Reed Global Tower, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every hallway she walked down carried whispers. Every time she pushed her cleaning cart past clusters of employees, conversation softened into murmurings that quieted the moment she came near. People who once walked past her as if she were invisible now glanced at her with curiosity, speculation, or confusion. A few even stepped aside respectfully, which only made her more uneasy. Her supervisor, Mr. Crowley, watched her with narrowed eyes, as though waiting for her to make a mistake he could pounce on. More than once, she caught him whispering with other supervisors while glancing in her direction, and each time, she felt her stomach knot. She kept her head down, focusing on her work, trying not to think about the hospital room or the way Adrian had looked at her as she left, but her thoughts kept returning there anyway. On the third afternoon, as she finished mopping the polished floor on the 28th level, her phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. "He asked for you today." Her heart lurched. She stared at the message, her fingertips trembling. Another text followed. "If you cannot come, please reply so we can tell him." She swallowed hard. She had told herself she would not go again. She had told herself he was safe now, recovering, surrounded by the right people. She had told herself she did not belong anywhere near him. But the thought of him waking and asking for her made something warm and painful twist inside her chest. Before she could decide, a voice cut sharply through the air behind her. "So it is true." She spun around to see Mr. Crowley standing with his arms folded, his mouth set into a deep frown. "The executives are talking about you," he continued, stepping closer. "A hospital visit. A private car. Special access. You think you can skip procedures and still keep your job?" Maya stiffened. "I am not skipping anything. I am just doing my work." Crowley scoffed. "Do not lie to me. I know his type. Men like him forget people like you as soon as they stand up again. You are being foolish." His words hit her like cold water, echoing the deepest fear she had not dared to say aloud. But before she could answer, a soft voice spoke from behind him. "Is there a problem here?" Maya's breath caught. Tessa from Human Resources stood a few feet away, tablet in hand, her expression unreadable. Crowley straightened quickly. "Of course not. Just ensuring my staff stays on task." Tessa stepped closer. "I need to speak with Maya." "Alone?" Crowley hesitated, clearly displeased, but he left with a huff. When he was far enough down the hallway, Tessa turned back to Maya and lowered her voice. "You are not in trouble. I came to tell you something important." Maya braced herself. "What is it?" "The board met again this morning. They reviewed everything that happened. Security footage, medical reports, the timeline. They know exactly what you did in that elevator." Maya felt her heart sink. Am I being let go?" Tessa's eyes softened instantly. "No. Quite the opposite. They want you to come to the hospital today." Maya flinched. "I cannot just leave in the middle of my shift." "You do not have to. You have been approved for paid leave." Maya blinked in disbelief. "Paid leave? Why?" Tessa took a slow breath. "Because Mr. Reed requested it." The world around her seemed to tilt. For a moment, she could not speak, she could barely breathe. Tessa continued gently. "Maya, he does not ask for things. His staff told me he has dismissed entire divisions for pushing too hard on personal matters. But today, when the board updated him, he told them he will not discuss strategic decisions or attend virtual briefings until he speaks with you. Hearing that made Maya's pulse thunder in her ears. She whispered, I do not understand why he would do that. I think. You do. The words were soft, but they struck deep. Tessa placed a reassuring hand on Maya's arm. Let me drive you. He is recovering, but he is restless. He keeps asking if you are all right. He asked whether anyone at work has bothered you. And he asked when you are coming back. Maya stared down at her trembling hands. Something inside her felt both terrified and undeniably drawn forward, as if the universe had opened a door she had never expected to approach. After a long, quiet moment, she whispered, All right. I will go. Tessa smiled with relief. Good. He will be glad. As Maya followed her toward the elevator, she felt that familiar fear swirling inside her, but beneath it, something new had taken root, fragile and warm, a flicker of connection she could not ignore. And as the elevator doors closed around her, she wondered what she would find at his bedside this time, and what he would say when she walked through the door. The drive to St. Mercy Hospital felt different this time. The city outside the window was the same, but Maya's chest felt full in a way she could not name, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and something warm that made her fingertips tingle. When Tessa led her through the hospital lobby and into the private elevator, Maya kept her eyes down, her hands clasped tightly together as if holding herself steady. The elevator doors opened to the quiet hallway she remembered, but this time, instead of feeling like she did not belong, she felt something pulling her forward. The nurse at the station smiled when she saw her. He has been asking about you every hour, she said warmly. You can go right in. Maya's breath trembled. She stepped toward the door of Adrian's room, hesitated only a second, and then pushed it open gently. Adrian was sitting up higher in the bed than before, color returning to his face, the heart monitor still beeping softly. His eyes lifted immediately when he heard the door, and the way his entire expression softened at the sight of her made her heart skip. You came, he said quietly, almost like an exhale he had been holding in for too long. I did not want to interrupt anything, Maya whispered. I wanted to make sure you were all right. Adrian let out a soft breath and motioned toward the chair beside him. I am doing better today. Much better now that you are here. She sat slowly, hands folded in her lap. I heard the board is waiting for you to return to work. Adrian gave a faint, wry smile. They can wait a little longer. Some things matter more than numbers. His gaze held hers in a way that made her heart flutter unsteadily. After a moment, he continued, Maya, I know you did not come here for recognition, but I cannot undo what happened in that elevator without honoring what you did. She shook her head quickly. Please do not feel like you owe me anything. I did what anyone with a beating heart should do. No, he said softly, you did what a rare person would do. He shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. Before I collapsed, I was pushing myself past every limit. I thought work was everything. I thought I had to carry this company on my back alone. But when I woke up, all I remembered was a voice telling me to hold on. You pulled me back when I could not find the strength myself. Maya swallowed the lump in her throat. I was so scared, she admitted. But I just kept thinking that you deserved a chance. That someone would miss you. Adrian looked down, his voice quiet when he spoke again. No one would have. Not in the way that truly matters. I built a life full of power, but not connection. Wealth, but not warmth. You reminded me that I am human. And you reminded me that being alive is not the same as living. Maya blinked back tears she had not expected. The room felt smaller now, softer, as if the air itself carried something unspoken between them. Adrian reached out slowly, offering his hand rather than taking hers. A gesture of respect, a gesture that asked permission. After a hesitant moment, Maya placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers gently, warm and steady. I want to do something for you, he said. Not out of obligation. Out of gratitude. Out of something I do not quite have the courage to name yet. Maya felt her breath catch. You really do not owe me, then let me give you an opportunity, not repayment. He paused. I want you to work for me. Properly. Not as a cleaner. As my assistant in safety and employee well-being. You have already saved one life. I believe you can help me build a workplace where people feel seen. Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. I have no training for that. You will, he said gently. I will make sure of it. You have the heart for it. The rest can be taught. She stared at him, torn between fear and the sudden, overwhelming possibility of a different future. Why me? She whispered. He held her gaze with quiet honesty. Because when I was dying, you were the only person who looked at me as a man, not a title. And now that I am alive, I want to look at you the same way. A tear slipped down Maya's cheek before she could stop it. Adrian reached up slowly and brushed it away with the back of his knuckle, his touch careful and reverent. Whatever you choose, he said softly, I will respect it. But I hope you will let yourself step into a life that sees your worth. In the stillness that followed, Maya felt something shift inside her, something blooming where fear had lived for so long. She squeezed his hand gently. I would like to try, she whispered. Adrian's smile grew, warm and relieved, and for the first time since she had met him, it reached his eyes. Outside the window, the late afternoon sunlight spilled across the floor, bright and golden, as though the world itself had opened a new chapter for them both. And sitting beside his bed, fingers intertwined with his, Maya felt something she had not felt in years, hope.